Mr. Speaker, this week the member from Timmins James Bay revealed the depths of his diabolical penchant for thought control and his yearning for totalitarian power when he tabled his laughable yet chillingly Orwellian bill that would actually put people in jail for saying things he doesn't like. Canadian fossil fuels could displace dirty coal, lift people out of poverty, defund Putin's war machine, provide good jobs, and generate taxes to pay for health care. But under Section 8B of this bill, those very words would become a crime. And the penalty under Section 19 would be up to 2 years in prison and a $500,000 fine. Mr. Speaker, when socialists don't like the facts, they criminalize debate. And after 8 years, Canadians are tired of being told what to think and what to say. And they're tired of being insulted. But I'll keep telling the truth, even if the member from Timmins James Bay and his liberal NDP friends think I belong in jail.
Well, folks, looks like we got another NDP lunatic in the House of Commons, as Charlie Angus from Timmins decided to put this bill forward earlier this week in regards to fossil fuels.
The honourable member from Timmins James Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last summer, 200,000 Canadians were forced out of their homes from toxic fumes. Children were unable to go outside. The issues of asthma attacks on elderly from toxic pollution from fossil fuel burning. There are more people dying every year from fossil fuel pollution than from tobacco. The big tobacco moment has arrived. We know that big oil has had years of disinformation and interference and false claims about the damage that they're doing to the planet, but they are also killing people. Today, I'm proud to rise and introduce a bill that will make illegal the false advertising by the oil and gas industry. The big tobacco moment has finally arrived for big oil. We need to put human health ahead of the lies of the oil sector.
But the Albertans I talked to in downtown Calgary do not agree with the proposed bill. This Calgarian has lived in the city his entire life and has worked in the energy industry.
It's ridiculous. We need energy and power, and we don't get it from solar and wind on a regular basis. It just goes up and down, and we can live without it, have to live without it.
This Calgarian, who has also worked in oil and gas, thinks the comparison of oil and gas advertising to big tobacco is ludicrous.
And you need some very deep, serious psychological intervention.
If you're going to argue against something like fossil fuels, you should do it from a position where you aren't currently using them. And good luck living in a city anywhere in the world.
Now, as you heard from the opening statement, if this bill were to get passed, you could be imprisoned for up to 2 years or fined $500,000 for simply talking about fossil fuels, some being better than others, or even, I guess, just talking about them in general. Because if you go to Section 6 of this bill, with the promotion of fossil fuels, it says prohibition. It is prohibited for a person to promote a fossil fuel-related brand element, or the production of a fossil fuel, except as authorized by the provisions of this act or the regulations. Now, if you go to Section 8, it says, in the manner that states or suggests that the fossil fuel, its production, or its emissions are less harmful than other fossil fuels than their production or their emissions. So if you were to state that natural gas is better than, I don't know, burning coal, burning wood, garbage, for example, you could get fined. Or even saying that in our society, we need fossil fuels, like for trucking systems or anything like that, you could get fined for that. And that's right in here in Section 15 with offenses and punishments. If you scroll down to Section 19, it says every person who contravenes Section 8, which is what we just read, is guilty of an offense and liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $500,000 or to an imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years, less of a day, or to have both done to you. Now, the good thing is the reality that this bill even gets passed is probably slim to none. But how are these the people that we have voted into these positions that are coming out with the craziest bills that I've ever heard? And again, this is just for the general person. If you are somebody who actually produces fossil fuels or anything like that, you could have a fine of up to $1 million, 2 years, or both. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous. This man is trying to control what can and can't be said in Canada. This is fascism right here, where he's going to punish you for simply saying that fossil fuels aren't as bad as they say. It's not the real boogeyman that they like to try to make it as. Because guess what? If we got rid of all the fossil fuels today, we would be screwed out of our minds. We don't have anything to take over it. Which this actually takes me back to a video I saw when those Just Stop Oil protesters were throwing paint on the Mona Lisa or soup or whatever. And a British news network actually challenged this girl in regards to her views on this particular subject.
And I wonder why you think it's incompatible to help people with the cost of living crisis and to switch to renewables, which are 9 times cheaper than fossil fuels. Can you name me one of your viewers who is suffering the consequences of the cost of living crisis, who doesn't want their energy bills to be 9 times cheaper right now?
Well, unfortunately, that's not what's happening, because the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, and you need to have fossil fuel backup to make up the gap. About half our energy every day is still coming from natural gas. Where's that going to come from?
Well, why aren't we implementing renewable technology? The largest solar farm in the UK was built in 6 weeks.
But it's not
it takes up to 28 years for any oil to come out of the ground in the North Sea.
But it's not going to produce any energy at night. That's the problem with renewables, is that they don't provide the base load that you need.
We already have the capacity to provide so much of our energy from renewables without any technology needed for storage solutions.
But where is this coming from? Because when the wind doesn't blow, when we had really cold days, we were reliant on importing from the EU, on coal and on gas. How are we going to replace that in the short term?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I am doing is listening to what all the experts are saying. We're living in this insane world where the experts aren't being listened to. The United Nations has called for no more oil and gas. The International Energy Agency has said we can have no new oil and gas. The IPCC report, the largest global report on the climate crisis, have all said we can have no new oil and gas. How many more experts need to say it?
Because we can't do it tomorrow. What are we going to do in terms of transport? That we still need petrol for cars and we need diesel for lorries. How are we going to get goods into supermarkets without this?
Quite frankly, I'm not a scientist. What I'm doing is I'm looking at the world, and we're living the effects of the climate crisis today. Right now, people are dying. Children are starving. Families are fleeing their homes.
But energy is...
And it's preventable. We have the solutions.
Cheap energy is one of the things that has hugely extended life expectancy by the ability to control temperatures, whether this is by air conditioning or by heating, the ability to store food more effectively, the ability to transport food, and indeed use fertilizers to grow more food, has all been essential in increasing life expectancy. Taking all that away would be disastrous for life expectancy.
Do you know what's essential in keeping our food supply? Tackling the climate crisis. This year we lost 1/3 of our wheat crops, half of our potato crops, and it's only going to get worse. We're heading to a future where people are going to be fighting over the last loaves of bread at Lidl.
But the only way we get our wheat crop is by putting the fertilizers on that come from fossil fuels. How are we going to replace that? That the productivity of organic farming is so much lower than of modern farming methods. We cannot feed the world on organic farming, and you must know that.
How do you expect to feed the world when our crops are destroyed by droughts, floods, wildfires, storms?
You've always had weather events that have affected crops, but that actually using fossil fuels for fertilizers and moving on to genetic modification of crops has enormously increased the yield. That since Malthus rate, we've increased agricultural productivity by about 2% per annum. And this is what is allowing people to get extended life expectancy because they've got more certainty of food. And this all depends on cheap energy, which has come from fossil fuels. What evidence is there that this is because we're using fossil fuels, that the climate evolves, but more people die each year from cold than from heat?
And I love this video because you can see she came in with definitely some scripted talking points. And then when she got backed into a corner, she kept just saying, well, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a scientist. This girl reminds me of a very young Stephen Guilbeault. But anyways, that's just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this whole situation. As I said, it's very unlikely that this bill is going to get passed, but who knows in today's world. So leave your comments in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.